Hi guys! We are going to continue our notes that we started yesterday on natural disasters today, and we're going to be starting with wildfires. Wildfires are obviously very destructive fires that occur naturally sometimes, but a lot of the time they're actually caused by humans, leading burning fires when it's too dry, right? Like when there's a burn ban, or lighting cigarettes, throwing them out on the highway, all kinds of small things that we don't think anything about that can actually start huge destructive fires that destroy millions of acres. I'm sure that last year when right before the pandemic started, Australia was having a lot of trouble with some wildfires there that were destroying natural habitat for a lot of koalas and native species there. So wildfires can be hugely destructive because they're very hard to stop. They burn off all of the vegetation, leaving an area really prone for erosion. So as we go through today's notes, just like yesterday, you're going to be writing these in your journal and adding them to your notes from yesterday. This is going to be a video. I'm going to link the video in below this one so that you guys can go and watch it. The audio never seems to come through when I show it to you guys in the PowerPoint. So you're going to click the video that says wildfires right here. Go watch the wildfire video. All right. Hurricanes are another type of natural disaster that are caused by weather, right? This is a weather system that occurs when we have a really, really low pressure air mass over a warm body of water. And so basically what feeds it is convection currents, right? Those rotational currents of air. There's warm water at the bottom. The more the air gets warm, it rises up and it causes this rotation to happen. And that rotation causes the spinning of this larger section of air. They can be very, very wide, miles wide, and can last for a week or more, right? They can travel large distances. As long as those convection currents keep getting fueled by that warm water and that low pressure, they're able to keep spinning and creating havoc and wreaking destruction everywhere. Hurricanes also often spawn tornadoes because on the edges we get a lot of thunderstorms usually through hurricanes, and high wind speeds, flooding, and storm surge, which happens when the water surges from the ocean onto land. This is what caused a lot of the damage during Hurricane Katrina, was flooding caused by the hurricane. So all of these can start with just this low pressure tropical storm, tropical depression, which eventually turns into a hurricane. This is going to be the hurricane video, so watch the hurricane video here. Hurricanes, why are they so deadly? What makes them so big and bad? Well, like I said earlier, they can cause a lot of other things. They can trigger flooding, mudslides, landslides, tornadoes, huge economic costs. They're going to cost people a lot of money to replace broken homes and businesses and buildings that get damaged. Habitat loss for animals that live in these coastal areas affected by hurricanes can also be negatively impacted. So hurricanes can cause a lot of destruction, and they're very large. They can cover a large area of land, bigger than a state, right? Maybe not bigger than the size of Texas, but bigger than a state like Mississippi or Louisiana. So hurricanes are just very powerful. And as long as they have that warm air over the water, they're going to keep getting fueled and keep wreaking havoc. So here are some pictures this is actually from Biloxi. I don't know if anybody's from there, maybe some of my military kids. My husband and I were stationed here. Well, my husband was stationed there. I was along for the ride. We've been there twice for about 9 months, both times. And this is, I don't know if you guys have been there before, but there's a visitor center in Biloxi, and it's a large old antebellum home. It's been rebuilt now, but this was after Hurricane Katrina. Really the only thing standing still was this white lighthouse that is in the middle of the Highway 90 that runs along the coast there. So you could really see the two pictures and how drastic the change was, right? It just completely wiped everything out. And that's because the storm surge just completely obliterated it, right? When we look at our impact on Earth, when we think about weathering and erosion that we were talking about last week, you can see a lot of that sediment comes in, right? This is our normal beach. When all of that water washes in and pulls sediment and sand, everything from the beach then becomes on the bottom of the ocean, right? And so it can pull a lot of that sediment pollution that we were talking about into the water, along with anything else that's on the coastline, right? If there's beach umbrellas and chairs, it's going to pull those into the ocean as well. What about tornadoes? I hope you guys like my little cow gif up there. Tornadoes are another weather event, but they're a little different in that they're caused by a different type of weather system. So these are a rotating column of air, where a hurricane is a huge mass of air that rotates. A tornado is much, much narrower. It's not very wide, but it can have really, really high wind speeds, up to like 300 miles per hour. These are usually caused by warm, moist air, and tornadoes usually happen when two fronts meet. So anytime we have a warm air mass and a cold air mass, you're going to have the possibility of there forming tornadoes. And that's, I'm sure you've seen on the news, sometimes when we get a thunderstorm, they'll have these zones of rotation that they're looking at. And that's because those rotations happen as a result of a lot of big thunderstorms. In winter and early spring is a lot of times when they happen. They happen a lot in what we call Tornado Alley through the Midwest of the United States. And then there's also what's called Dixie Alley, which is through Mississippi and Alabama, kind of along that meeting point of those two states. And actually, Dixie Alley has more killer tornadoes where people are actually killed than Tornado Alley does. So this is kind of going to walk you through just a little bit about how these tornadoes form and how it's different from how hurricanes form. So if you look at the picture over there to the left, you've got the thunderstorm, and then you've got it's meeting these two air masses, right? We've got cool, dry air, and we've got warm, humid air. And remember, the warm air, it wants to be on top, so it's pushing, right? But because they're kind of like two bulls pushing at each other, right? There's conflict between the two of them. And so it causes that spinning to happen, that rotation. And so when tornadoes form, there's warm, moist air that's coming from the Gulf of Mexico, and then dry air that's usually coming from Canada. And those two air masses meet, there's instability, right? There creates some friction. We often see a lot of thunder and lightning, right? And if there is a spin that can begin in that lower atmosphere, it's going to rise up through what we call an updraft, and it's going to tilt it just a little bit. And this is how hail forms. Hail actually are small water droplets that fall, and then they get pushed back up into the cold air. They freeze, and then they fall back down because they're heavy. They get pushed back up, they freeze, and they fall back down because they're heavy. So that rotation can be 2 to 6 miles wide, right? And this is usually where we're seeing our weather people on the news telling us that we've got a zone of rotation, right? Which means that there's a possibility of a tornado occurring. This is going to be your tornado video. So pause this and go watch your tornado video. Consequences of tornadoes are big, right? They can destroy buildings, they can uproot trees, they can carry things long distances, they can not even appear to be there because they can be transparent until it starts to pick up dirt and different debris pieces and carry them. And then you can also have multiple tornadoes that come from the same supercell or thunderstorm cell. And so all of these factors are what make tornadoes so deadly. They can move very quickly and then they're gone, right? They're usually not around for longer than 5 minutes or so, but they can cause a lot of damage in that time period. A tsunami. Now, we also don't see tsunamis very often here in San Antonio, but tsunamis are large ocean waves that are caused by either earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Sometimes it could be like a meteorite impact if it hits in the ocean, or an underwater landslide, right? So anything that's going to cause a huge disturbance in the ocean can cause a tsunami. And this is a big wave that's going to hit the coast. They can occur during any season, anytime during day or night. And the areas most at risk are going to be coastal areas that are not very far above sea level. The impact is obviously going to be flooding, drowning. People, drinking water can be contaminated by that sewage and things where they're flooded. This is going to cause all of those same types of things like flooding would, except then there's going to be a lot of debris in the water because that huge push of those waves is just going to decimate houses and property. And there's going to be a lot of broken pieces of cars and trees that's going to be in the water. So it's going to be really important for people to stay safe and stay out of that water. Here's going to be the tsunami video. Here is a diagram of an area before and after a tsunami, and you can see that it has just taken all of the vegetation away, and we know that vegetation holds soil in place. So anytime we have a tsunami, we're going to have a huge issue with erosion and trying to maintain the water quality around it by things not being in the water. You can even see the difference in the color of the blue of the water in the picture below, the before picture, and then the picture after, on how brown and dirty the water looks from all of the sediment and debris that's then been sucked back into the ocean there. Volcanic eruptions. Now, volcanic eruptions look really cool on TV, but in reality, it's not very cool. It's very hot. Volcanic eruptions happen when there's hot pressure that builds inside the Earth's crust, and it is allowed to come out of a volcano. It can be caused by gases or magma, and it's going to push until that equilibrium state is reached again, right? It's going to build and build and build pressure until there's a release of that pressure to restore that balance. Lots of damage can be caused by volcanic eruptions, including ash. Think about the Mount St. Helens video that we watched. Fire hazard, earthquakes can be spawned from volcanic eruptions, mudslides and landslides from the instability of the land, and melting ice caps if it's on the top of a mountain with water. There's just a huge amount of negative impact of a volcanic eruption. Here's kind of the shape of a volcano and how they build, and you can see these layers because every time an eruption happens, one more layer is added, right? And so we've got layers of ash, we've got layers of lava, and this big magma chamber, right? This area of melted rock, and this is how it gets out, right? Is through the opening of the volcano. And here's your volcano video. Drought. A drought is the last natural disaster we're going to be talking about, so almost done. This is a long period of dry weather. I know you guys have been talking about the Dust Bowl in history and how negatively that impacted the people that lived in the area. And so the same thing is true of any drought, right? Long periods without water can cause huge water supply issues and shortages, which can be really detrimental for people, plants, and animals. When we don't have that precipitation, or we overuse our natural water resources by overpumping or depleting our natural water supplies, this can cause droughts, right? And droughts deprive plants and animals of the water that they need. Crop fields are often left barren, and then that leaves openings for wind to erode the ground, right? Just like in the Dust Bowl, when they cut the tall grasses, and then there was nothing to hold the soil in place, and so the soil blew away and wind erosion took place. This last video is going to be the video on drought, so if you'll watch that one, you'll be done for today. I hope you guys enjoyed learning from me and seeing some videos of different natural disasters in action, and I hope you have a fantastic day.